And welcome to the Invest in Ghana podcast. If you want to know anything around investments, this is the podcast you need to be watching. My name is Vivian Kai Loko. Now, the creative industry is a huge one with growing inroads every now and then, but it's got more potential than we think. How do we ensure that this industry gives us the best? Today's discussion, we're looking at the current state of the creative industry, the investment opportunities in there, and what stakeholders can do to make the industry much, much better. And I have three people who are in that industry, and will give us their perspective around the takeaways we're hoping to get from this discussion. The first person I'm introducing is Constance Swanika. She is the founder and president of the Design and Technology Institute, DTI. I'm sure you've all heard about that institute, great one there. And she's also the founder of Accents and Arts, which is an award-winning fabrication company. Constance, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And another person very familiar on your screens or behind the scenes when it comes to productions is George Ni Amakwe. He's a broadcaster, he's a producer, he's a director, he's also a writer and a PR expert. George, welcome.
It's an honor to be here.
And then I have Marian Kalim Ajiman Wahin. She'll tell me where the Kalim is coming from in a minute. She is a Ghanaian marketing executive, brand strategist, as well as a fintech leader. She's also the chief operations officer for Akuna Group, who are also partners for our Invest Ghana podcast. And we're actually in their creative studios here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we're all in the industry. I'm doing a bit of broadcast and digital, everything, fashion and all that. So this question I'm throwing to all of you on our current state in the industry. From where I sit, I have an idea of fashion, digital, and media. But from your side, arts, creators, where are we? Constance, and you guys can chip in anytime.
Definitely is growing. When I ventured out into the space about 25 years ago, there was no creative industry, or it was only just emerging. So for those of us that have been in the space for a very long time, I think it's such a delight to see a young person actually, opting for that industry straight away, without having to fight parents or having to explain, to society why you chose a career in the arts. So I'm very encouraged.
I like the part about fighting parents bit that Constance just mentioned. I recall my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. Everybody at home wanted me to be a lawyer. So many years ago when I decided to venture into this space, my dad sat me down and said, if you tell me you want to be an engineer, I can say, yes, look at that engineer. That's his house. Those are his cars. He lives well. You want to be a doctor? I can point out to that doctor. You want to be a lawyer? You can point out to that lawyer. You want to be an actor? To be like who? Because back in the day, the popular ones we had were your super ODs and your and these aren't people who looked wealthy or well-to-do or successful. I mean, we were struggling with them for the Trotro stations and all of that. Usually they would reserve the front seat for them because they were the stars. But they didn't look like people who were in an industry that had a lot of creative or wealthy energy around it. It didn't look like it paid well, and a lot of people didn't even want to pay for the ads. I mean, if you attended a concert party show and stuff, it was free.
Why is that? At the beginning, people didn't want to pay for talent. Like there was no
because
respect
it died.
for talent.
But I'm sure we'll come back to that later. It died. I mean, 79, 83 period, art was dead in Ghana because of the coups and the curfews and everything. 6 p.m. you're in your room, you're going to bed. Which entertainment? Where are you going to perform what? So a lot of our creatives migrated to Nigeria. You understand? And by the time they came back, there still wasn't that much value in the space for people to say, yeah, this is what I want to do because it's paying. It didn't look relevant. It didn't look profitable. So really that period, the revolutionary period, it killed art in Ghana. No two ways about it.
So that's where the issue of the poor payment, poor respect, triggered.
So there were very little people pursuing the arts, so it didn't look like it. And there was nobody who was willing to go pay to watch a movie or go pay. It was around the time, that was when the cinema started dying, because we had cinemas, your Roxy's, your Rex's, your Constellation Gold Blazes, you name them, lots of them. But they all died, and there was nobody to attend them. I mean, 6 p.m. you had to go to bed. And showbiz sells best at night.
Yeah.
But
have we started paying them better? The current situation. Marion, don't run away from it.
I mean, we are looking at a 5.1 billion value
industry
sector, right? And just to add to what Constance said and George, we have more work to do than we think.
Yep.
And the work we have to do is more, for me, structuring the sector as a business. And I say this from the perspective of how other businesses are structured, because there is a component of it that is the creativity and the culture, which we all appreciate, regardless of class, regardless of age. But I think that the missing piece is the structure of it as a business, because for those who would invest, for those who would appreciate it, for parents who would get to acknowledge and endorse their children, there has to be some standardization of what it is, where it's going, and what the future of it looks like.
Yeah.
And if you ask me, I think that is the piece of work that if we focus more on, the creativity would not be the problem per se, because I believe that talent we have in abundance. Yeah. I always juxtapose it to the gold we have in our country. We have gold in abundance, but until that gold is found and is refined, it's just
sitting there.
It's just sitting there.
Utilized.
Or you look at diamonds, they're just rocks till it's refined. But that refinery process is the business process. And that is where I believe the real work of what we need to do sits. We are a country with so much talent. We are a country with so much opportunities. The arts have been with us always. Even if you look at the way our storytelling is done, even if it's not on TV, it's around a tree. If it's art, it is on calabashes, or even the way the market woman would arrange peppers. So the arts live with us all the time. The phrase of dying, for me, I would like to stay away from that, because I believe that it's not dead, it's not dying. It is the repackaging and the packaging of it that makes it attractive. But sometimes I think that as creators, we also get lost thinking that it's going to be done by someone else. It's our work to do. You wouldn't go to the medical industry and the doctors will be saying, oh, our hospitals are dilapidated. No, they will build the hospitals and they would manage the hospitals. And that's why, for me, I really admire someone like Constance. And interestingly, I was talking about her to a friend of mine this morning about the dialogue session you had a couple of days ago. And she was just giving me feedback of how it went. And for me, it was about our ability to drive the thought leadership, our ability to drive the business, the ability to drive academia like you're doing with DTI. So there's practicality. There's something that people can see, people can touch, people can feel. And for me, once we keep hitting on that, the value of why and what makes it easier.
Right.
So that then when you're talking about payment, there's a reference point. Because I can say that, okay, education costs X. The cost of my costuming is Y. The cost of production is.
So.
Then you quantify that. So when you are paying me, you know that this is what you're paying for. But if you come in with just the talent, the person paying you doesn't see the talent. Right. Not because you are not talented, but remember that as talented people, God has blessed us with a gift. So you walk in a room and you see art. But the person you're talking to is probably a scientist or an accountant who sees math. So it's zeros and ones, and it's a balance sheet. So I can't see the gray area you're talking about. But if you don't translate that to the language he can understand, then it's difficult for him to say, I'm going to pay you a certain
amount. So repackaging and then the business part of it. But you look at our friends or brothers and sisters on the other side, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, they've been able to get to that point, haven't they?
Yes. To
Or
some
you think
extent.
they haven't? I think.
You see, I think sometimes art is broad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pottery, there's basket weaving. It all comes under art. You know, there's calligraphy, painting, you name it. When you look at Nigeria, you can say they've developed in just two parts of their art, film and music. What else? But there's more to art than that. At the moment, south of the Sahara, we're talking south of the Sahara, I think Ghana is doing better in theater than any other country. Yes, it's not really metamorphosed into the kind of numbers that we would want yet. The one thing that Nigeria beats everybody else with is numbers. You understand? I mean, they recently got banks to come together to renovate their national theater because they've seen there's something in theater and they want to go there. They want to push it. They want to grow it. And I think that is the one thing that we lack in Ghana. Investment in the art. But like Marianne just said, it's zeros and ones. Somebody's got to make that pitch that makes sense to those who would want to put money into it. When Nigerians are talking money, you appreciate the way they talk it. They let you see it. And when you spoke about it being like gold had to be refined and all of those things, and comparing it to talent, a word dropped into my mind. Talent also spells latent, and latent actually means hidden. So somebody needs to bring it out.
Who will bring it out?
We're the ones here. We have to bring
So
it out.
why are we struggling to
Who
bring
says
it
we're
out?
struggling? We're not struggling.
What happens
It's just
to
that
bring it
for
out?
some strange reason, in our part of the world, people are reluctant to invest in the art. Why? I still do not know. Maybe
You
Marianne
know
has
why
done
I'm
the
researching?
research.
Because I mean, you are academic.
Having an earlier conversation about our colonial past, you said something about our political history. You know, we were trained to be civil servants. And so if you look at, you know, our parents and the generation behind them, you know, they were fixated on a white-collar job. So we were not necessarily trained to be skilled workforce. But if you go back into our history, we actually were very good artisanals, you know, so we were doing amazing fabrics, very good weaving, our basket making, we were goldsmiths, you know, we were working with our hands. We went through an apprenticeship system where you were working with a master. And then education came, and it was based on a grammar education. So it's always very important to go back to our history. When you understand your history, then it helps you to understand where you're going. On that basis, you know, coming back full circle, you said something very profound. I mean, for me, I've always been an artist. That's all I've ever known, you know, so just really defining the space and making it easier for young people behind us to see role models and creatives who are doing well. You know, I think in that regard, how do we tell the story in a much better light? You know, I see so many young people who say, oh, we see what you're doing. And so it gives us hope that you can make good money being in the creative industry. So I think to the market is in the story. And I liked what you said about it's a business. Creatives don't understand that, you know, you're running a business. You know, and I remember when I started my company, Accent and Art, I had graduated with a degree in art, but nobody was going to buy a painting if they haven't eaten.
Exactly.
The last thing that they would do is when they have disposable income is to then buy a piece of art. You know, but if you also understand that, you know, there's so much value, especially if you collect paintings, it appreciates. So if you're an investor, you're buying art that is appreciating. And that is very big in Nigeria now. So if you look at the likes of Ibrahim Mahama and, you know, some of the young artists who are making a lot of money, you find that, you know, people who have disposable income now are buying art. You know, so again, how do we tell the stories and how do we also invest in our art schools? When I was in KNUSC, my department was the worst department on the campus. They invested in the other
And forgot about you guys.
areas because we were artists.
It's everywhere.
We were mad.
It is everywhere.
You know, it wasn't worth investing in our
When you go to the School of
infrastructure.
Performing Arts, University of Ghana right now,
For over 24 years, they started a new auditorium for the School of Performing Arts. I mean, it's 2026. if drama students want to rehearse a play, they have to do it in an open air auditorium that was built somewhere when the National Theatre was coming to be built at where it sits now. They moved Ibi Groma from there to the School of Performing Arts and did that open air auditorium, which can seat up to about 300 people. You have students, about 1,500 students. Imagine everybody wants to come watch a play. You have to do various runs. And if it starts raining, everybody has to run out. The auditorium that was started about 24 years ago was abandoned. Within the period, math department has its own, they have new buildings there. Science department have new buildings. Business, we have, but the one at School of Performing Arts has been abandoned totally. So yeah, it's not just KNUST. The art simply has no respect anywhere.
Well, I think that from a 24-year span, right? And Constance has said, from when she left till now, there have been those who've graduated.
Yeah.
There are those who are still graduating.
Still graduating.
So if we did a 24-year, 5 alum per year, and they came together and said, let's go back and fix that, what would that look like?
I can tell you for sure that some tried.
For me,
And that's where
for
the
me,
politics comes in.
yeah, but
Maria.
I think that we also need to be very focused. Because if 5 people every year came together with a fund and then was matched by an organization or even the school itself, I'm sure they would listen.
That's what I was going to. And I'm telling you, it has been tried. They did not listen.
But you see, for me, another aspect too is if it won't happen in the school, then you have opportunities like a DTI. A Constance maybe probably went to KNUST, they were not ready.
Yeah.
But she set up DTI and it's working. And I am sure they will even come back to Constance and say, Constance, what can we do together? How can you help us with what you're doing?
So that's the role of private sector.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're also earlier talking about public-private partnerships. Private sector moves very quickly.
Yes.
And public sectors usually do catch up. You know, so I think this is where, when we're talking about investing, this is where the role of private sector, because if we're going to leave it to the state, they would catch up much later. The industry doesn't wait. And now if you talk about technology, you know, it makes the urgency even more, faster. So this is where, I speak very strongly for private sector. It was the same frustration that led to the establishment of DTI, and we're moving very quickly, so I think for us in the space, the conversations around what do we do in coming together as a private sector body. And I think if we want to see even more amazing work being done in the creative industry, we shouldn't sit and wait.
Exactly.
But the other thing is also, I find that people are not collaborating as they should. So that's something that we also need to deepen.
Is it a cultural thing? It looks like collaboration is a word we all move away from.
Exactly. And that's why I raised that word collaboration. People are doing things in silos.
Yeah.
The importance of coming together. Because if you're doing a program like multimedia, you need different elements of talent, so this is where storytelling and film and photography and, all the
Everything here.
the people behind us are doing. And that's something that we need to get over, that culture of I'm doing something and I don't even want you to know what I'm doing. You know what I'm doing. Exactly. So I think it's something that we also need to get over.
Yeah. And just 2 points here. One, from the investment perspective, there is the hope and it's happening. Bearing in mind who our founder is from an Akuna perspective, Idris Elba says, Mariam, we are going to take Africa to the next level with the creative sector. And there is no day he does not talk about what he's going to do for the sector. There is no day he's not having conversations with key partners in the private sector, in government, to make sure that the creators of Africa get the limelight they need, get the business support that they need. And he is not even talking country, he's talking continent.
Yeah.
And he's saying, look, if I have been able to get to this far, why can't I bring along my people? So the good thing is that the potential has been realized by global icons like himself. He is being very intentional in investing on the continent. We currently are in Ghana, as we are here right now. We are in the Akuna pod. We are in Sierra Leone. We are in Kenya. We are in South Africa. So we are being very intentional to push the investment. And we are bringing along his network. He's bringing along his network. And he's saying, this is where it's happening. So come. And what Constant also talked about, collaboration. What we want Akuna to be able to do is fix the infrastructure. Because we believe the talent is there, like I said. Yeah. So from an Akuna perspective, our focus is on the infrastructure. What are the tools that are needed? Is it education? Is it crowdfunding? Is it studios? Is it digital asset products? So if you look at Akuna Wallet is a product targeting creators who are not able to receive their funds from the West. So this gives you an automatic American account. And that solves the problem of over 50 million creators that we have even in Ghana, right? A couple of weeks ago, there was an issue with ex-creators who couldn't receive their payments.
Yeah.
But because we saw such a problem, we went and found a partner in Stellar Development Foundation in the US. And they said, okay, Idris said, let's go to Africa. Let's go solve this problem for them. And we did. And with the help of Bank of Ghana, it's within the sandbox. Hopefully, in a couple of months, we should be getting a full license.
That's great.
And the Akuna wallet is working.
It's going to be up and running.
Just imagine the world that just automatically opens for them. Then we said, collaboration is key. We work in too many silos, and nobody is talking to
Yes,
each other.
we're not interacting.
We're not interacting. So we said, why don't we create a hub, a creative hub? And that's where the Akuna pod came to life. And for us, the Akuna pod then becomes the convening ground. Yeah. So you're a young creator, you're an older creator, you are an educationist, you're a business person. The hub is for you. We give you all the opportunities here, whether it's the education you need, whether it's the technical support you need, whether it is your opportunity to just meet a Constance or a George or even a GIPC. Come to the pod and just tell us your problem. And that's it. And that's where the collaboration starts. Because as an enabling platform, then you are comfortable. So you are not guarded by, you're not worried about the fear of your art being stolen or your idea being, captured by someone else. But no, once we all understand and appreciate that by collaborating, everybody wins, then we are moving faster and quicker as we should.
I think we should touch on also intellectual property.
Yes.
I go to a lot of art exhibitions and I see the same, themes and the styles. But what creatives have to recognize that we're all very different and you all have your unique talents, and there's beauty in diversity. So this is where it's okay to get ideas, but it doesn't mean that you're blatantly copying. Mm-hmm. That's different, and I see that also with the young creatives who don't have confidence in themselves.
Yeah.
So it's high time we also start talking about it's not okay to copy. It's okay for you to get ideas to build on. So this is where also when we talk about business, intellectual property, that is also sometimes overlooked.
I think as a people, generally, we sleep on our laws. Yeah. For things like intellectual property, I don't think we should just talk about it. I think we should push the laws and punish people who actually violate it. Yeah. It is the only way to stop it. Because if Constance should spend hours to sit down and come together with a mind-blowing painting, and then you just go and hide in some corner and do a duplicate of it of a sort and go and say, you should be punished. But it is theft. Seriously, it is theft. And with the advent of AI and all of that, it's even worse now. Yeah. So I think we ought to be very, very serious about this intellectual property thing and push the laws and ensure that people are actually penalized. I think as a people, we are where we are because we do not activate our laws enough. We don't push, people don't get punished enough for violating stuff, and I think if we're able to get that, because people are lying in the West because they know the laws will come at them. The laws are there and they work.
And even if it's something
basic
sounds
traffic regulations.
familiar,
Yes,
slightly familiar to
slightly
even
familiar.
a
You
Somebody
go to
trigger
court.
something,
exactly,
yeah.
you are in court,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think that is where we ought to
Yeah.
get to. We should not just talk about intellectual property. We should ensure that the intellectual property laws, whichever we have, are working, and we should push them. People should test the law. Go to court. It doesn't matter how small or irrelevant it may seem.
Yes.
Go to court. Let Ghanaians laugh at you. Let them call you petty. Let them call you whatever. But go to court.
But I think
To
also
set the
it's
precedents.
awareness. And, that's why I'm excited by the initiatives that Akuna is, pushing, that sometimes maybe it's also lack of awareness. But platforms like this allows us to now be more intentional about the conversations that we're having. I'm very hopeful because, as I said, 25 years ago, it was just being very resolute about what I wanted to do. But if you ask me, did I know where I was going? No. The only thing that I knew was that I was talented and I wanted to pursue what for me came very naturally. But this is where also, when we also invest in young people, confidence and basic skills. Look, I've had to reinvent Accent and Art 5 times.
Wow.
I've had to go back to school to learn how to manage my own business. Because a lot of the times, creatives are not business minded.
True.
So you find that they have then managers who then come in and take advantage. But it's your responsibility to understand business. And I always tell creatives that, listen, divide yourself into two. There's the creative side and there's the business side. I'm a hardcore businesswoman. Sustainability is very important. So that's something that who is also guiding and investing in young creatives. You're going for a meeting and why are you dressed so shabby? Because you think you're a creative? What does that mean? So even the way you're presenting yourself, why would anybody take you seriously? And when you price that work like that, do you even look like $1 million? $1 million for you too. And then you're an emerging artist. And then your piece is $1 million. Really? So those sort of things that they don't even understand what it means to cost. You are just emerging.
Yes.
You're not even a master yet. You see, so sometimes just delusional, thinking.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting when you talk to the older artists that these young artists, they come on top.
But it's not like maybe perhaps they are more bolder. And want to challenge the because they've seen the old folks that they struggled. We have some actors that if you see their current conditions, it's very sad.
I don't
Perhaps
think
they want
so.
to change things.
I think there's an awareness. I mean, you're a business, you understand figures.
Yeah.
I liked what you said, zeros and ones.
Zeros and
Imagine
ones.
it. So you've come up with a piece. Nobody knows you yet because you see, you're selling a brand. It takes years to build a brand. But they don't, they have to understand you have to small. Look, business is, you are a startup. Before then, you prove your minimum viable product before you then go to growth. Even growth, it takes time.
Then you mature, then you decline.
Exactly. Exactly. So who is teaching them the basics of even business skills?
So one of the things we are doing as Akuna is going into strategic partnerships with institutions. So we've signed an MOU with UNIMAC.
Okay.
And what we are doing is bridging the gap between academia and institution. So leveraging the thought leaders within the private sector to give some of their time, an hour or two, to these students so they can better appreciate what it takes to be a business.
The reality on the ground.
And then we are also then ensuring that we are making it as practical as possible so that it doesn't sound too far off for them. And what we are also making sure of is the fact that we are also enhancing their bit on the soft skills. Because like you said, it's very important. And then where they lack on the business side, we are also letting them understand that there's the importance of partnerships, right? Part of going to school is to build a network. So within your network, who's good at what? We could all be creatives in the classroom, but there could be somebody who could be more analytical than another. So how are you creating these subgroups and mini businesses amongst yourselves without losing out on the opportunities when you step out. Because when you step out, it's a wild, wild west, but at least within the 4 years on campus, you can test, you can explore, you can make the mistakes, but do it with yourselves. You think of the big digital businesses now, they all started on campus, from your Facebooks to your Googles, whether it's from a garage, they all started from somewhere.
Problems with partnerships, do you think it's there's a bit of our culture behind it? Even religion, this concept of don't let the left hand see what the right hand does and all of those things. You're coming from home. Could you if you some more?
I think it's
You think you because
There's
some,
a
you
Ghanaian
grow up
culture,
with it.
yeah.
It is there. So as soon as you meet somebody, you're suspicious already.
Exactly.
You understand?
I think
Socialization.
Socialization.
So I
you
think
understand?
there's a bit
we
of
need to find a way to break that.
there's a bit of unlearning and learning,
Yeah,
right? And then also a bit of knowing what your gaps are, understanding the world.
Yeah.
You have to push yourself to some level of exposure. You either are exposed or you're not.
Yeah.
And if you know you are not, accept that you are not and find people who are and learn. The good thing is that we are in a digital economy now. So you have no excuse. You can be in the smallest village and go on Google and understand China and know China so well.
Exactly.
But if you
Without
look at-
stepping.
Sorry, but if you look at young creatives,
Yeah.
how are we even spending our time productively? You said something about learning and relearning. And when we say creating a learning environment, I find that they're so distracted as well. So this is, for me, again, the role of mentorship and role models, that it's our responsibility to guide them. We have a no phone policy during school hours that I find that there's so much information overload. So they are very distracted. They should be a bit more focused. So I think it's our responsibility really
I
that
agree.
how do we beat it into them? Just to be focused.
Yeah.
We didn't have that, the distraction. I remember my time in Kenya. There was nothing like the internet, and you're all over the place. So we used our time a bit more productively, so I mean, the world is not waiting for you. And I think that's something that they grapple with. And a lot more mental issues. So much being pushed out there. And when you're creative, I always say that we're all borderline.
Something.
We're all borderline. Because they call you, you're walking around and you are seeing all sorts of things, and you are seeing what we are not seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
We're very different.
Yeah.
We're born differently. And I think if you appreciate that, creatives are a bit more fragile.
Yes.
We don't talk about it. But if you look at it, mental state, sometimes you wake up, and I'm inspired. Inspiration and this idea. And then everybody is looking at you, there she goes again. I tell them that, look, don't try and understand me.
Yeah.
Just follow. I need you to just follow, because we're visionaries. We see what you don't see.
Yeah.
So every time I tell my staff, I'm seeing what you're not seeing, but just respect that. And I just need you to follow me. Mm-hmm. Don't try and understand that. So who's also creating that environment where we thrive? A lot of them are sometimes bipolar. They're dealing with, and then in their home, there she goes again. This one, she's different.
Yeah.
So by the time you hear that, you're grappling with all these issues: low self-esteem, confidence. So we're very big on the mindset. DTI, we have clinical psychologists that are working with young people who have been told you are stupid all your life.
Yeah.
That's why you couldn't go to medical school.
Yeah.
Or I'm in medical school and I told you that, no, I don't want to do medicine. You are forcing me to do medicine. They come to us and usually they have baggage.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about this.
Yeah.
And I think that I always say that the learning should be holistic. How do I help you ease your mind and for you to know that it's okay to be borderline? That's why you're different. I think, again, the way we are socialized, you don't talk about it.
Exactly.
But when we start having these healthy conversations about mental health and wellness and, all these sort of things, then it makes us thrive.
Right. Let's move to the, I mean, you've spoken about investing in the people, the talents and all that. Earlier you spoke about the infrastructure and all, but which other investment opportunities, so for somebody who's watching, who wants to invest in the creative industry, where should we point them towards? And this goes round.
Come to theater.
You say theater because that's
And I'll tell you why. You know, in the creative space, or let me say the kind of creative activity that demands you go out to sit somewhere to see it and all of that. Almost all creativity demands that anyway, but there's the ones that you purchase, like that artwork behind you. I can purchase, take it home, and then yeah, it does. But if you have to go out to see it, like maybe a music concert or a movie or maybe any show, a comedy show or whatever, I think the one that sits up top is theater. Okay. It's just that in Ghana, it's still just burgeoning, if I can put it that way. You know, people haven't fully embraced it yet, also because of our background. You know, back in the day when Osei Kofi and his band and stuff, they were going around doing their tours, they had something they used to call, it moved on to film, comedies, where they start and they have all these, what became concert party, the Bobokola kind of people, they do a little comical skit for people to laugh. They had these short skits before the real music concert would actually happen. So people would pay for the concert, then they would get a bit of theater for free because that was what started it. It relaxed them. So the idea that people now had to pay for it's taken a bit. And that is where I always salute Uncle Ebo White for keeping it alive, when even those of us who graduated from the School of Performing Arts abandoned it and went into banking and all sorts of other things and all of that, you know. So it's taken a while, but now it is doing so well. Look, this year, my partner collaboration, Nashako and I have been collaborating on theater for a while. We are two different entities. People think it's one company, you know, but we are two different companies. I'm Image Brew, she's April Communications, but we've been doing our theater shows together. We've been doing it for so long now. Organizations come to us to pay us commissioned plays. You understand? And for instance, on the 2nd of May, we're staging one. It has to do with child trafficking and child labor on the Volta Lake and the Volta Basin area in Ghana. It's going to be a free show because an organization has paid for it fully. That organization needed to tell a story, and they figured collaborating with us to tell that story would be appropriate. When we staged Ula Rotimi's The Gods Are Not to Blame, I recall Chief Dilomo would said, look, if I had the funding, I'll take you guys round Nigeria to let everybody see this because I've seen this play all my life as a Nigerian student and everything. I've never seen it done so well. So theater is growing. Organizations are inviting us to come do their end of year parties for them. Instead of calling people and jamming and drinking beer and all of those, they want to sit together, see a play. People are coming for international conferences. And as part of those conferences, they are asking that, oh, do you have a little skit? This is what this conference will talk about. Can you do a stage show of a sort to let people see it? So if you want to invest, I mean,
so what
Akuna, we should be having conversations on theater.
What specific should they do the infrastructure? Should they what
We definitely need the infrastructure because it is unfortunate that the National Theatre is just the only properly built structure that can do the kind of theater shows that we do. We are unable to travel with a lot of our plays because for one of our plays, for instance, The Legend of Akuska, we built a 22 feet high waterfall on the National Theatre stage. We used real life snakes, real life turtles and stuff. We actually built an enchanted forest of a sort. And it worked. The Gods Are Not to Blame, we had swords lighting on stage, trees, and all of those things. So, yes. Our budget for The Legend of Akuska was 1.2 million. Yes.
Were you able to clear that?
No, we've never been able to clear any amount back before. For The Gods Are Not to Blame, we blew about 800K. We didn't make it back. But
so your revenue is coming from tickets?
It's tickets and sponsorship. Okay. And that is where government also comes in. We've been shouting and advocating that if you really want to help develop the arts, look at the taxation, especially the concept of value-added tax. When you talk, Marian, they don't get it. If you're going to tax fuel, for instance, it doesn't matter how much tax you put on fuel. I will not ride a horse and I will not walk. We'll still buy. It doesn't matter how much tax you put on electricity, water, or whatever, we will still buy. But if you recall at the beginning, Constance mentioned something about disposable income. If someone is coming to watch my play, it is based on disposable income. And now I am competing with Netflix and all those other things at home. Like she also mentioned, people are very distracted. There is a lot. The options are way too many. So if my ticket for a play is going to sell for, say, 100 cedis, and my date is Marian. So I know it's going to be 200
200.
cedis, you know.
The drinks and the food.
She's no ordinary girl. You don't just Marian out and you just go and watch the play and go home. After the play, you need to pass through the Oxford Street, you know, have a little, sit somewhere, a little, you know. And if you don't have a car, you must get a vehicle that is good. Probably even rent a vehicle. You understand? So I'm looking at my budget. So if you tell me that I now have to add 21.9% tax on top of that ticket amount, they will tell you that, no, don't touch your ticket amount, it's still 100 cedis. But whatever you are adding is for the government, 21.9%. What they don't realize is that you've increased my costs. And because of that 21.9%, I look at me, I look at Marian, I look at everything else that I would have to pay for that day. We'll stay at home, watch Netflix and chill.
Yeah.
Would save it. So if government can look at the taxation bit for the arts, it happens with same music concerts and all of those. Look, Rapaholic, almost after almost every show, you see Kujo fighting with them VAT people. It's painful that sometimes they don't even care about your cost of production, how much you've put into it. For them, they expected you to detach that 21.9% component from your cost. But for us, it is zeros and ones, like she mentioned. So at the end of the day, I have done a play, I've spent $1 million, I have made 200,000 CDs back. And you are making more than I am making because you're government. And you are not listening to me when I'm talking. We'll kill it. Infrastructure. Even if you were going to put part of that taxation into building new theaters for me, I'll be excited. If you're going to put part of that taxation money into developing a ticketing platform, even our seats and the theaters are not manifest. You can't do it, because the platform isn't there. It's just not there. National Theatre is supposed to have 1,492 seats total. Half of those seats were broken some time back. Now they've tried to fix them. You understand? So the problems are a lot. You cannot move a play out of Accra to Kumasi because you don't have a properly set up theatre. You cannot do Takrady. You not have a properly set up theatre. You cannot do Sunyani. You cannot do Tamale. You cannot. Unlike other parts of the world, where when you develop a play and take your time and invest into it and find partners like Akuna, and they say, okay, we'll take this play. How much is it going to cost you to produce one? $100,000. So we'll give you the $100,000 times five, $500,000. We're doing 5 cities. And then they now take it, publicize it, and they can make more than $100,000. But it's paid for. You can tour. The facilities are there. Okay. They can go, they can do it. It is not like that here. So it is difficult. So I'm shouting that people should come and invest in theatre.
I think we are in an industry that has the potential of growth.
Yeah.
And the potential of growth is tied to the digital economy. It's tied to the fact that we have one of the youngest growing populations.
Youth.
We have a very peaceful country. And I don't think that government is not ready to listen or they are not hearing. I think we just have to be very intentional and sensitize. You see, if we are all in silos with problems and we are not even united to have a conversation on how to solve it, there are other problems, there are other sectors. So the real work is for us to first create that environment for togetherness. And that togetherness, you go to government as a business and say, these are the potentials. Until that work is done, nobody is coming to give you a white flag.
True.
And we have to call a spade and say that this is the work we have to do. There are structures to this. There's a Creative Arts Act, which was passed in 2020.
Yeah.
I would love to challenge how many people have read that act as creators.
Very few.
Very few.
Very few.
So if you haven't...
Because I had to talk about it on TV.
Exactly. So if, as creators, you haven't understood the framework, you haven't understood the policies, you haven't even read the Constitution to appreciate where you sit in the country, then you are on the wrong footing. Every district assembly has a cultural office. So just imagine with what you're saying.
Hold on. Every district assembly is supposed to have
and that is even that is a good thing.
Yes, it's supposed to.
So just imagine if someone like you with your expertise is able to even activate every cultural office within a district. Yes, National Theatre is great, but the power of IP is distribution. So if within 256 districts, you are able to distribute plays once a week with a community of even 100, Just picture the opportunity there that you can package that and give to a beverage brand, and they would want to invest in that. Give to a bank, and they will find an opportunity there. Because then they say, okay, we can go and tap into these communities too and drive financial literacy. A beverage company can say, oh, as you have this community with this kind of a data around 256 districts, oh, we can sell this product. Because at the end of the day, as creators, what we do is to create enabling environments. We tell the story. We are the cherry of the cake. So there is no organization that needs to go to markets that does not need a creative. There is nothing, if you need to communicate, you need a creative. If you need to draw, you need a creative. Even a PowerPoint. As we are in this room with production, it's creative people. So it is the most collaborative industry in the world. But the question is, within ourselves as creators, we don't collaborate. So let's collaborate. Let's put together that business document. Let us bring the key stakeholders. If it's a GRA we are talking to, we talk to GRA. They appreciate. The good thing is that everybody, regardless of what they studied or what their talent is, they appreciate art. They'll listen to radio in their car. They'll listen to music. They'll wear clothes.
Done some great work. Initiated conversation between creatives and the GRA. I think a session was held.
Exactly.
At the hotel
So
recently.
on the back of
But it needs to move.
that, but that moving is us. That moving is not for the ministry to no, because
we have to chase it.
you have to chase it.
So can I play the devil's I think you said something very important, that the whole idea and the focus is how do you drive investment?
Yeah.
I think that sometimes creatives should do what they do best and then have the business-minded people who understand the art of the creative industry. You said something very important about infrastructure. I run a school. Without infrastructure and assets, I cannot deliver programs. So one of the key things is you talked about the university. You talked about the National Theatre. Ghana doesn't have enough infrastructure to promote the arts. Akuna can only do so much. DTI can only do so much. But if we're going to grow the creative industry at scale, these cameras, very expensive. And every time a software comes up, you have to update. So let's look at definitely infrastructure. Assets. Let's also look at institutions that are also training, the creatives, those who would enter the creative industry. We do definitely need more creative schools. Then you then come to areas of specialization, because I look at what DTI is doing. I think that there can be 16 other DTIs.
Yes.
So I think this is very important, because without film, and by the way, everything is going digital. You talked about taking your stories. A lot of development partners, a lot of corporates are all very big on storytelling. Yeah. Do we also then need to look at the way we're telling stories in the modern context? I loved what you said about taking the story into the villages. Yeah. Mobile theaters, so how do we also then look at modern ways of, the world is global. So if you're doing production, definitely you do need studios and all these, but how do we tell African stories that are going to go global? That means that digital tools, streaming, but again, what about even funds that the creative industries can also tap in, but at the same time, you're paying back return on investment, So I think for me, definitely we do need a lot of investment to kickstart an industry that has great potential. So these are but definitely we do need a lot of investment to have the basics. And once we have the basics, that then really opens up, how big the opportunity is in the creative industry.
So every subsector needs the investment. Yeah. We're pointing investors to all these, sectors. Everywhere. But which quickly for policymakers, government, etc., regulatory, you've spoken about taxes, so we leave that. Others that they need to fine-tune, change to make the sector, perform better.
No, we mentioned infrastructure. That is
infrastructure assets.
Infrastructure assets. So we clear that.
And I think private-public partnerships.
Yes.
Okay.
Why shouldn't the industry take over
Yeah.
the theatre, the University of Ghana, for instance?
For instance.
I saw an article last week about the state of Ibri, the Ibri Gardens.
Yeah.
Should the government be running that? So when you talk about private partnerships, if an investor came in and you've given them all the parks, so
I know
how
an
do we
investor who
also
tried for Ibri Gardens
Yes.
and he was refused.
exactly? So how do we also
You try again.
Yeah.
how do we also encourage platforms like the GIPC to really look at the role they play
Can play
Yeah.
to facilitate these
to facilitate
investment
growth?
opportunities. Yeah.
So I think once we have that and we know that, we can revive and I give you the return. After all, I'm going to pay tax. So I think there's also the education bit, the regulation bit, and, more conversations around enabling.
Yeah. What I would just like to add on to
Just one cell quickly, then I'll come to you. You see, sometimes the
George,
reason...
it's not your show. You can't come to me. It's her show. So wait.
wanted to say something.
It's not your show. No. It's her show. No.
The reason sometimes I like to say leadership is part of the problems. When I was talking about the University of Ghana Theatre, for instance, it is a Get Fund project. I started working on a documentary to see why it had stalled. And the documentary led me to the Get Fund because the university said it is not our project, it's a Get Fund project. So if it stalled, blame the Get Fund. I went to Get Fund. And Get Fund said, no, if it is stalled, blame the university. Because what happens here is there are so many institutions across the country and we have to fund almost all of them. So every year, if let's say Unimac brings a bill for $1 million.
How do we get over the blame game?
No,
And move it, deal with it.
But then how do
I like
we...
what you said about if private people were to take over, and that is where I want to lead this conversation
Okay.
to. That
Regulation.
there's too much pressure on an organization like Get Fund.
Yeah.
It's about time the leaders opened up and considered, because I told you earlier that some students, past students had tried, okay, we want to fund this. And nobody is going to listen to you. Tell you, no, it is not. It's a university institution.
But you
We have
see,
to-
I
because
think-
they are
I
afraid
think
that when
let's not
private people
forget-
come in, the private
The
people
power
will
takes
But you see,
Right.
let's not forget that the forum and the platform is GIPC to enable
Yes.
both private
Private
and public,
Yeah.
partnerships, right? So with what venting, frustration, venting, I'm always thinking opportunities.
exactly.
Everywhere I see problems, for me, it's an opportunity, right? So again, we're talking about the potential of the creative industry that you can list all, but how do we then turn all these issues into the potential of unlocking, and where we're going? You said $1.5 billion industry. It is the private sector
Yeah.
that will drive this.
Yeah.
And I think, again, in starting, how do you start off on a pilot?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it seems daunting when they don't want to lose
Yeah.
control. But if we start off on a pilot, and then you see it
Scale it up.
for other investors to see what is possible
Yeah.
when you invest in it, so
Right.
Solid.
Well, I have to wrap up.
yes.
I have to wrap up. I think I have to do part 2 of this, but I have to wrap up. Thank you so
But I
much,
think you
guys.
wanted me
Mariam,
to-
you have 2 seconds. And that 2 seconds, I can't
Don't
show
worry.
you'll be there.
It will be 2 seconds. I just want to add that there's an opportunity for us to collaborate as creators and even with GIPC to support with data, research. Anyone making an investment decision needs to start with that data and that research. And I think that all creators out there should understand and appreciate the value of putting that data together.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Constance Swanika, George Ni Amakwe, and then Marian Kalim
Ajimambwa. You wanted to know my Kalim?
Yes.
All right.
I'm sure by now famous is Amy, but tell me what.
All right. So I'm from the northern region.
Okay.
So my dad is from the northern region. My mom is from the western region.
Okay.
So Kalim is my maiden name, and Ajimambwahin is my married name.
Oh, wow. Nice.
That makes sense.
So thank you for joining us for today's edition of Invest Ghana under the auspices of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, also in collaboration with Akona Port Studios. This is their studio and we're shooting this wonderful podcast here. And if you want to know anything around the investment terrain, Invest Ghana is the podcast to watch. I'm Vivid Kai. Bye-bye.